Welcome to my DAS manipulation tutorial. DAS manipulation simply has to do with the transfer of DAS from its original position to a different location or position on your block or on your pattern, with the aim of recreating a style or creating something else other than the initial style you had on your on the dress you are working with. Right here I have drafted out or pointed out different locations on your bodies in which your darts can be transferred to. Right here we have a contour dart which falls below your bust point. Now I want you to take notes of these. Every dart has to point towards the fullest area or the most curvy or pointed area of your bodies. The most pointed part of our bodies is the bust point. So right here I have my bust point, and in order to draft out or to mark out your darts, you have to go not less than an inch away from your bust point, so it won't have that pointed edge on your bust point. Now this depends on the shape of your boobs. Right here I went 2 inches away from my bust point to construct my contour dart. Here I have my side dart. It's usually called the side dart or the bust dart. Any dart that points towards the side and downwards of your body is referred to as your French dart. So right here is my French dart. Your dart can also be placed on your center front. It could also be transferred to your lower neckline, your upper neckline, in between your shoulders, on the end of your shoulder line, on the armhole, anywhere around the armhole, anywhere around the side. So it's just a matter of choice. You can decide wherever you want to transfer your darts to. So for the sake of this tutorial, I have marked out my bust dart or my side dart. So I'm going to cut through one of the legs. It doesn't matter which of the legs you cut through. I'm going to cut through one of these legs and cover it up in order to create another dart. Now calm down, you're going to see how that is going to go. So right here I included 1 inch just so it will lap well. So this is my actual side curve. And on your bodies, it's always advisable you are meant to add 1 inch at least. That is to cover up this 1 inch you're going to take out. You're going to include that on your bodies and then slant it through. So I'm going to go ahead to cut out one leg of my dart. Now your darts, when you're cutting your darts, you should ensure that you cut up to your bust point but not through your bust point. Cut up to your bust point but not through your bust point. This will allow you to pivot your paper nicely without any obstruction. Now since I'm going to be manipulating my dart, I'm not actually creating this particular dart. I will have to connect my darts to my bust point, and it's going to look like this. So this is my 0.5, this is the other 0.5. So this is what it's going to look like. Let me make use of my marker. So I hope you don't get confused at this point. So like I said, this is a side dart. If you want to manipulate your dart, you have to cut through up to your bust point. In the case where you are going to sew your side dart as your actual dart on your dress, you are going to move away from your bust point by at least an inch before creating your dart legs and sewing it out. Now there's another term I want you to get familiar with, and that's dart equivalence. That's making use of your dart volume without actually sewing it up, without creating seams. So you're using up your dart volume. You can create pleats, you can create tucks, you can create gathers, or even create a cowl neck, for example. So you're going to create that particular dart volume, but you're not going to use it up. You're not going to sew it the way you sew a normal dart. Instead of sewing it, you can create pleats or gathers. That's when you're sewing. But right here I'm just going to show you how to manipulate your dart. So how you're going to use up your dart volume is up to you. Now I have created my dart legs and I want to cut through this particular line. I'm making use of a thick paper in order to help me pivot well. And so now I have cut out one of my dart legs. I'm going to go ahead to transfer my dart. So now I want to transfer my dart to my center front. So I'm going to go ahead to cut it through. You want to be very careful when doing this. So now I have cut through this dart at my center front. So I'm going to go ahead to close it up by lifting this and then turning it up to this point. So I've actually closed this dart. Now at the end of the day, you can trim this out. So I'm going to go ahead to show you other possible locations where your dart can be transferred to. Closing up this our original dart, I have this dart right here. Now closing this up, I have my French dart at the side. Closing up my French dart, I have my lower neckline dart. As you can see, the shape and the size of the darts differs, but they do not in any way affect the form or the style of the dress. That's something you should take note of. So ignore the shape and the different shapes and the different sizes of the darts. Now I'm going to close up my lower neckline darts. And now we have a dart at our upper neck line. You can see the shape of this is slightly bigger than the lower neckline, the dart on the lower neckline. So closing up this to create a dart on our shoulder, the center of our shoulder. This is what we're going to have. So now this will be the last illustration I'm going to make. Closing up this, we have a dart on our armhole. Another way dart manipulation is very useful is when you have an excess on your armhole or on your neck. So in that case, you can manipulate your dart to recreate another dart to close up that space and make your dress look very perfect and okay. Now the final dart I'm going to make use of is our shoulder dart. So now I'm going to be making use of the slash and spread method for this dart manipulation. So I'm going to go ahead to pick up a different pattern paper. So you can see that these are the legs of our shoulder darts. We're creating a new dart. So I'm going straight up to mark out the midpoint of my dart leg of my dart. You can either do that with your meter rule, measure it out, fold it to get the midpoint, or you can make use of your ruler, your meter rule. After doing that, I'm going to connect my bust point. I told you earlier that you have to move away from your bust point to avoid that pointed edge. So taking out 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters, I'm going to recreate my dart legs from this point. So from this point to this starting point, then this point to this point. So when that is done, we have a new dart transferred to our shoulder. Now if I want to use up this volume without actually sewing the seam, I can just make gathers, or I can make 2 darts. If I feel my dart volume is too much, I can make 2 darts on this point, or I can make gathers or make pleats or tucks. Or basically, this is how to manipulate your darts. Now we've transferred our darts to a new paper, making use of the slash and spread method. So all you need to do is to just trace out what you have, and then you have your new pattern. Trace out the armhole, the shoulder, the neckline. Then you can transfer it to your fabric and do whatever you want to do.